A Ho-Chunk legend tells that the Wisconsin riverbed was carved by a gigantic serpent as it slithered south from the North Woods, splashing masses of water that gouged out lakes as it went. Wisconsin is defined by water, sitting between Lake Michigan and the Mississippi River. It has more lakes than any state but Alaska. There's an appeal to its land that's drawn tourists and inhabitants from across the world who've made it a place with a rich history and culture. This video is the story of Wisconsin. Before the 17th century, prehistoric Native Americans had been the only people to step foot in Wisconsin. The woodland culture was the first in Wisconsin to hunt using the bow and arrow and to make pottery. A millennium ago, they built over 3,000 effigy mounds shaped as living creatures. Around the same time, the people of the Mississippian town of Aztalan on the Crawfish River built 3 impressive platform mounds, then abandoned their town for unknown reasons, though their need to build a wall around Aztalan could be a clue. The American Indians in Wisconsin were self-sufficient, surviving by hunting, gathering, and farming corn, beans, and squash. But their ways of life would soon decisively change after the arrival of the French. In the 1600s, the Empire of France was extending its reach to America, where its colony of Canada procured valuable furs. To seek out new suppliers of fur, the French-born interpreter Jean Nicolet ventured across the Great Lakes into uncharted territory. Nicolet was intelligent and resilient, used to surviving off tree bark when needed, and he had negotiated peace with the Iroquois. Paddling through the primal waters of Green Bay, he witnessed a landscape untouched by the marks of the modern era. Wisconsin of 1634 was full of towering forests and pristine prairies. Adorned with a colorful robe of silk and firing 2 pistols into the air as he stepped ashore, Nicolet became the first European to reach Wisconsin. The Ho-Chunk people welcomed the good-natured explorer, sealing their friendship by feasting on beaver. A later expedition, led by the missionary Jacques Marquette, retraced Nicolet's journey and pushed further. A people they called the Fire Nation showed them a 2-mile portage linking with the Wisconsin River. Despite warnings of lethal creatures in the river ahead, they followed the Wisconsin westward, passing the forested bluffs of the Driftless area, and finally reached the channel of the Great Mississippi River. It was a monumental find. This near-continuous water route through Wisconsin became the conduit of a flourishing trade through the heart of North America. French allies such as the Ho-Chunk and the Ojibwe bartered vast numbers of beaver pelts for European products like cloth and guns. This arrangement worked well, until a number of new tribes moved in from the east. Settling on the Fox River, the Meskwaki, also known as the Fox, came to resent the French trade with their enemies. The Fox cut off traffic through the waterway, and France sent a military force to join Allied warriors. For 30 years, Wisconsin was a war zone. Locals have long recounted how after a battle on Little Lake Butamore, the dead were piled and covered with dirt, forming a large hill on the west side of the lake. Hence the translation of Butamore, Mound of the Dead. Exhausted by war, the Fox were allowed to return to the Fox Valley. The fur trade carried on peacefully. Green Bay and Prairie du Chien, the endpoints of the Fox and Wisconsin waterway, grew into permanent French-Canadian settlements with culture and families, and maple syrup festivals. Green Bay's Tonk Cottage was built by a French-Canadian resident in 1776, the oldest house in Wisconsin. But great change was coming. The 7 Years' War ended French control in North America. And after the American Revolution, future Wisconsin lands became part of the Northwest Territory of the United States. Almost none of Wisconsin's inhabitants wanted the American takeover, so the U.S. built 3 forts at key locations. These strongholds marked a new era, for they signaled to potential settlers that the U.S. would defend the territory. Some French-Canadian fur traders continued their work and prospered, like Charles Grignon in Kaukauna. His 1837 mansion in the woods stood as one of early Wisconsin's most impressive residences. While the fur trade only brought a few white settlers, the discovery of lead at Mineral Point in the 1820s set in motion the Wisconsin Lead Rush. In search of fortune, miners ascended the Mississippi to the Driftless area, hoping to strike lead. But this was still Native American territory, and angered by trespassing miners, a ho-chunk known as Redbird led a chilling retaliation at Prairie du Chien, murdering and scalping several Americans. Before long, hundreds of U.S. soldiers mobilized, and very few Indians supported the uprising. So Redbird approached the U.S. soldiers at Portage and sang his death song as he surrendered. The ho-chunk soon agreed to sell off the mining land. Men now surged into the lead district. Without housing early on, miners sometimes camped in their own mining tunnels, earning the glorious nickname Badgers. In 1830, Mineral Point's population surpassed that of Milwaukee and Chicago combined. By the 1840s, Wisconsin was the source of over half the nation's lead production. Miners from the Celtic regions of the British Isles came to the lead region looking for work, Wisconsin's first large group of European immigrants. These immigrants brought with them old-world superstitions like belief in Tommyknockers, underground spirits that enjoyed pulling funny pranks on miners like blowing out their lanterns. Stories also abounded of the Ridgeway Ghost, a pesky phantom who stalked people on the road east of Dodgeville, doing things like beating them with rods. While lead drew the first settlers, the next wave came for land, spurred in part by the Black Hawk War. 5 years after Redbird's surrender, U.S. forces quelled a far larger uprising at the Battle of Bad Axe, north of Prairie du Chien. The Sauk chief Black Hawk had led 1,000 warriors to reclaim his ancestral village on the Rock River, but outmatched by U.S. forces, they fled with the army in pursuit. After the final battle, Black Hawk was captured, and more Indians sold their territory and moved westward. These lands soon opened for purchase. Now linked to the Midwest through the Erie Canal, the East Coast broke out with Wisconsin fever. Settlers and investors came scouting for land, then raced over dirt trails toward the sales office in Green Bay to buy their chosen parcel before anyone else. The strike of axes on wood resounded on the prairies as men crafted their first home, the log cabin. While laborious to build, it could be done with as little as an axe, the perfect pioneer structure. But the era of log buildings was short-lived, as sawmills sprang up, churning out loads of mill-sawn lumber. Some of Wisconsin's oldest buildings are made of local lumber in the Greek Revival style, the first high-fashion architecture in the Midwest. Arrivals from the Erie Canal eagerly disembarked at the new ports on the lakeshore, towns each vying to emerge as the metropolis of the region. But with daring founders and the finest deepwater harbor on the lake, Milwaukee rose as Wisconsin's dominant city. Its first settler was a French-Canadian named Solomon Juneau, who ran a fur trading post on the Milwaukee River. Juneau envisioned a thriving city on the marshy land around his cabin and founded Juneau Town between the river and the lake. Others agreed the site was well placed. The Connecticut-born Byron Kilbourne built Kilbourne Town as a rival city directly across the river. As an underdog due to his late start, Kilbourne used every means to stifle Juneau Town. He promoted propaganda. He refused to build a bridge that would link them to the countryside. Even as he drew the street grid, Kilbourne misaligned the roads of the two towns, hoping to further alienate the east side. Milwaukee's oddly angled modern bridges are a result. The territorial legislature finally mandated the towns bridge the river, but ongoing tension erupted into the Bridge War of 1845. Angry mobs clashed, vandals destroyed bridges, and Kilbourne's house was even targeted with a cannon. Shaken by the violence, the towns calmed down and formed the single city of Milwaukee, hoping that united, they might best their Lake Michigan rival, Chicago. In 1836, the U.S. Congress formed Wisconsin Territory. President Andrew Jackson picked frontiersman Henry Dodge as governor. Dodge chose Belmont in the mining district to be the territorial capital. But then the ambitious lawyer James Duane Doty pitched a new spot for the capital for 3 strong reasons. His site was more centrally located. It was placed beautifully on an isthmus between 2 lakes. And he owned much of the land there, which promised him serious profits if selected. Using pro-tactics, Doty gifted warm buffalo robes and deals on lots in his new city to win over the legislature. It voted his site of Madison to be the new capital. By 1848, the population was large enough for the territory to level up and apply for statehood. Under President James Polk, Wisconsin took its place as the 30th state in the Union. In the next episode, we'll see Wisconsin's journey through its early days of statehood, as it grows and transforms into a haven for the peoples of Northern Europe.